Benjamin Franklin sits on the $100 bill, but what they never taught you in school is that he was an absolute mastermind at psychological manipulation. He used one specific, almost sociopathic trick to turn his worst political enemies into his most loyal friends. The strangest part? Modern psychology has proven it works every time. It's called the Ben Franklin effect. And once you understand it, you'll never look at human relationships the same way again. Picture this. It's 1736. Franklin, born one of 17 children to poor parents in Boston, has clawed his way up from nothing. He's a printer, a publisher, a civic organizer, and now he's just been elected clerk of the Pennsylvania General Assembly. This role gives him access to legislators, to political networks, to real power. But the following year, when he's up for re-election, trouble walks through the door. A new assembly member stands up and delivers a long, brutal speech against Franklin's nomination. Franklin described this man as a gentleman of fortune and education, with talents that were likely to give him, in time, great influence in the House. Franklin wins the clerkship anyway, but now he's got an enemy, a wealthy, educated, influential enemy, who won't just disappear. In colonial politics, enemies like this don't fade away. They fester and grow dangerous. Here's where most people would screw up completely. When faced with an adversary, most people try winning them over by doing something nice. They send gifts, offer compliments, maybe even grovel a little. Franklin did the exact opposite. Instead of doing his rival a favor, he asked his rival to do him one. Franklin had heard that this man owned a certain very rare and curious book in his personal library, so he wrote a note, expressing his desire to read it and requesting the favor of borrowing it for a few days. The rival, flattered that someone of Franklin's stature would acknowledge his collection, sent the book immediately. Franklin returned it about a week later with a warm note of thanks. Then something remarkable happened. In Franklin's own words, "When we next met in the house, he spoke to me, which he had never done before, and with great civility." These two men didn't just become cordial, they became genuine friends, lifelong friends. The rivalry evaporated completely, replaced by warmth that lasted until the man died. Franklin distilled this experience into a maxim that sounds completely backwards. "He that has once done you a kindness will be more ready to do you another than he whom you yourself have obliged." The person who does you a favor will like you more, not the other way around. It feels wrong, but it's one of the most reliable findings in all of social psychology. So why does this work? The answer lies in cognitive dissonance, a theory that wouldn't be formally described for another 200 years. In 1957, social psychologist Leon Festinger published a groundbreaking book called A Theory of Cognitive Dissonance. Festinger discovered that human beings experience deep psychological discomfort when their actions contradict their beliefs. When that conflict arises, the mind doesn't just sit with the discomfort, it resolves it by changing the belief to match the action. This is what drives the Ben Franklin effect. When Franklin's rival lent him that book, his brain faced a contradiction. I just helped a man I despise. That thought creates dissonance because we don't typically go out of our way for people we hate. So the mind, desperate to restore consistency, rewrites the story. I must not actually dislike him. In fact, I must like him. Otherwise, why would I have helped? The rival didn't consciously decide to change his feelings. His own psychology did it for him, automatically, beneath awareness. Psychologist Daryl Bem offered a simpler explanation with self-perception theory in 1967. We infer our attitudes by watching our own behavior, just like an outside observer would. Whether it's cognitive dissonance or self-perception, the mechanism remains the same. Our actions reshape our feelings. In 1969, psychologists John Jecker and David Landy tested this with 60 male undergraduate students in a quiz competition where they could win cash prizes. Afterward, 1/3 of the winners were approached personally by the researcher and asked to return the money as a favor because he'd used his own funds. Another third were asked by a secretary. The final third weren't approached at all. Then everyone rated how much they liked the researcher. The results were crystal clear. The group asked directly for the personal favor liked the researcher the most. As Jecker and Landy wrote, "Since one does not usually benefit persons whom one dislikes, the situation creates dissonance." The personal nature of the request triggered the psychological shift. 2 years later, University of North Carolina psychologists found the flip side. Teachers who praised students during learning tasks rated those students as more likable afterward, while teachers who criticized students came to view them less favorably. Your actions toward a person reshape how you feel about that person. Kindness breeds affection, cruelty breeds contempt. not the other way around. This is where things get uncomfortable, because what Franklin did was psychological manipulation, whether he understood the neuroscience or not. It raises a question that psychologists have wrestled with for decades. Where's the line between social intelligence and outright manipulation? In 1970, psychologists Richard Christie and Florence Geis formally defined Machiavellianism, named after Niccolò Machiavelli, as a personality trait characterized by manipulativeness, indifference to morality, lack of empathy, and calculated self-interest. It later became 1/3 of what researchers called the dark triad, alongside narcissism and psychopathy. The Machiavellian treats life as a chessboard where people are pawns, relationships are leverage, and morality is optional. Was Franklin a Machiavellian? It's a fair question. He was, by his own admission, a schemer capable of guile and persuasive charm. But here's the critical distinction. Franklin's goal wasn't exploitation, it was reconciliation. He didn't use this effect to extract resources from his rival or destroy him. He used it to build genuine friendship. The manipulation was just the doorway, but what walked through it was real. That matters because this tactic has a dark side. Soldiers who kill enemy combatants sometimes come to hate those enemies more afterward, not less. The same cognitive mechanism that turned Franklin's rival into a friend can turn violence into dehumanization. Your actions reshape your beliefs, and if those actions are cruel, your beliefs follow. There's also a flip side to the Ben Franklin effect. When someone does you an unsolicited favor that you didn't ask for, it often triggers suspicion rather than gratitude. Why did they help me? What do they want? This is psychological reactance, first described by psychologist Daryl Bem in 1966. The feeling that your autonomy is being threatened. That's why doing favors for enemies usually backfires, and why asking for favors works so much better. Today, the Ben Franklin effect shows up everywhere. Wikipedia asks users for small donations, increasing their emotional investment in the platform. Online stores request reviews after purchases. Politicians ask supporters to display yard signs, knowing that small acts of commitment deepen loyalty. In workplaces, asking colleagues for feedback on projects builds rapport more effectively than offering unsolicited help. Research shows the effect is strongest when the favor is social rather than transactional, when you ask for advice rather than money, and when the request comes soon after meeting someone for the first time. Benjamin Franklin figured all of this out in 1737 with a borrowed book. No lab, no control group, no theory of cognitive dissonance. Just a man born into poverty with extraordinary understanding of what makes people tick. He grasped something most of us still resist. Our feelings don't drive our actions nearly as much as our actions drive our feelings. If you can shape someone's actions, even with something as simple as lending a book, you can reshape how they feel about you entirely. He that has once done you a kindness will be more ready to do you another. Franklin called it an old maxim. Psychology calls it cognitive dissonance. Either way, it remains one of the most powerful tools in human interaction, hiding in plain sight for nearly 3 centuries.